The food octave. Regarded as an octave, the ray of creation starting with the note do, at the upper level of the absolute, and reaching the note ray, below at the level of the moon, is a descending octave, do, si, la, sol, fa, mi, re. It can be seen that it cannot be an ascending octave once we understand the concept of hydrogens, or energy levels, which are formed at different points in the descending scale of creation. The absolute is composed of the finest possible matter, and is the highest energy level. No higher, no finer matter, or no finer, subtler, more penetrative energy, no higher frequency is possible. The act of creation, therefore, cannot be in the form of an ascending octave, for that would imply the creation of finer, and finer matters than those belonging to the starting point, to the absolute, which would be creating something finer than itself, which is impossible. However, man has the possibility of creating finer matters in himself. We are created as a self-developing mechanism. That is, we can create something finer than ourselves, and in so doing, can ascend the ladder of creation. Exactly where we can create these finer energies will be explored. The ray of creation is then necessarily a descending octave, and the energy matters belonging to it, at different points in its descent, necessarily increase in density or coarseness, slowing down their vibration. They become coarser and coarser, the further removed they are from the source of the ray, the absolute itself. This is shown by the numbers connected with the hydrogens, i.e. H6, H12, H24, and so on. Each number denotes a denser, or coarser energy. So the hydrogens get denser, or coarser as one passes down the ray, and this is illustrated in diagrams, where the relation of hydrogens to their positions in the ray of creation are given. Although the octave of creation itself is a descending octave, the octaves in the human machine are all ascending octaves. We can often observe in this work that our level represents a reflection, as through a mirror, of something higher, such as Lewis Carroll's looking glass, where things go in the reverse direction. The three hydrogens in the universe, used by man, for our life, enter from outside, and form starting points or does for ascending octaves, which is life for man. That is, man, as a living being, transforms lower energy matters into higher energy matters. This is our life, and life is transformation, where we are able to transform lower hydrogens into finer hydrogens. Taking then only the food octave, starting from hydrogen 768, which is called food for man, it is transformed into hydrogen 12 ultimately, through a series of successive steps, which constitute an ascending octave. Do 768 becomes, by transformation, Ray 384, and then Ray 384 becomes Me 192, and so on, through a process of transformation. The illustration is presented in as simple and abbreviated a form as possible. So the whole of this ascending octave of food represents successive stages in the digestion of ordinary, everyday food, and water, taken orally, into our bodies, from the standpoint of the work. Many stages and steps in its digestion exist. The first digestion, or transformation, occurs in the mouth, intestines, etc., and this can be understood easily enough through high school biology classes. It is what is called a digestive system, in physical science. The food that we eat is first transformed into a finer form, and as such begins to pass inward, through the walls of the intestine, into our lymphatic system and bloodstream. At this stage, it is called, in the work, hydrogen 384, or water, at the note or stage ray. We would be greatly mistaken, however, in thinking that this is the end of the process of the digestion of food, in our human mechanism. It has only just begun, as the first step of full digestion, in a work sense. Hydrogen 384 then passes to hydrogen 192, called air, at the stage or note, Me. All that can be said here is that just as wrong or faulty digestion may occur in the passage of hydrogen 768 to hydrogen 384 in the stomach, which is ordinary digestion, so too again, another kind of indigestion can occur in the passage of hydrogen 384 into hydrogen 192, and this has to do with the air that we breathe. Which is to say, that digestion at this stage cannot go on without air. However, this topic cannot properly be folded in as simple an explanation, and so will need to be expanded upon later. Hydrogen 192 then passes into hydrogen 96, at the note Fa. This is a further stage of digestion. Hydrogen 96, at the note Fa, or Fa96, is called animal magnetism. Other names such as pheromones are of course given to it. The point is that its materiality is intermediate between the coarser visible hydrogens and finer invisible or psychic hydrogens. Notice too that it is made in the middle compartment of the three-story factory, comprising a human machine. Let's now look for a moment at this hydrogen 96, which appears here, under the sign, or at the note Fa. Fa96 is called animal magnetism for want of a better term. But if we call it simply vitality, or health, we may not be using quite the right term. However, it is connected with vitality, a healthy state of being, yet is not quite the same thing, for physical vitality or health depends as much on the appropriate amounts of hydrogen 384 and 192. Obesity or substance abuse are not conducive to good health. The term animal magnetism means something animal, and so in a way too, something physical, some sort of vitality, or health, as opposed to repulsion. The term magnetism denotes that it is at a higher level, not lower or gross. A person may not enjoy very good physical health in the ordinary sense, and yet possess the resilience and strength that comes from having Fa96. Someone indeed may be ill physically, and yet possess sufficient quantities of the substance Fa96 to make them transcend this illness, and on the other hand, they may be well physically, but possess insufficient quantities of Fa96, and so have little power of making others feel better. This can be thought of as life force, the will to live, or a passion for life itself. Long ago, someone asked a teacher what Fa96 signified. The answer was that if we had sufficient quantities of this hydrogen, fleas would not bite them. Of course, the people who heard this answer were shocked, and considered it irrelevant, even crude. But the idea is exactly expressed in the answer. Fa96 is something that protects us, as it were, like an envelope, or an aura of vitality that surrounds us. So let us look at its position. As stated, it is manufactured in the second story, and as in the illustration of the centers in man, the emotional center is situated in the second story. It dominates it by its presence and its condition, or its state of being. The formation of Fa96 is interfered with if our emotional state is unsettled. Negative emotion, despair, nervous fear, anxiety, wrong imagination, jealousy, depression, schizophrenia, chronic dislike, constant worrying, attention deficit, and so on, are all negative states of our emotional center. Such states occurring in the second compartment of a human machine have the ability to prevent the formation of Fa96 in sufficient quantities, and so deplete a person of this important substance. The individual is then robbed of their animal magnetism and will to live. They lose the desire for anything positive. This step in the digestion of food is interfered with, and so we suffer a particular form of indigestion at that point, which prevents the octave of food from developing any further, in a healthy manner. It is important to note here that sometimes very negative people, or some kinds of sick people, can drain a person of Fa96 through their aura, their presence in our lives, but only if we identify with them. Then we feel drained, although we may be quite well otherwise. Whereas contact with a person with Fa96 gives us energy, being around them motivates us and makes us feel rejuvenated. People who are habitually negative, particularly those who are malicious in their long-developed jealousies and hatreds, suffering generational trauma, tend to feed on the Fa96 of others, and actually take delight in exhausting them, especially in the case of younger people. They are the real vampires that we speak of, who suck that aspect of the blood called Fa96, so we should always avoid contact with them. Again, simply dull, depressed and lethargic people, who make no effort in life whatsoever, can without any evil intent, sometimes drain another person, in the same way, of this very important force. Remember though, that only for the time being, that all negative states of oneself can prevent the proper formation of Fa96, which is a very important energy in the human mechanism, and protects us from a liturgy of ills, both physical and psychic. The next stage in the full digestion of food, from the work point of view, is the passage of Fa96 into Sol 48. This hydrogen 48 is the first mental or psychic hydrogen. It is the lowest energy matter used for thinking, and is therefore food for thought. It is used by the formatory side of our intellectual center, the ordinary thinking part of day-to-day life. If the formation of Fa96 is being interfered with, say by negative states, by internal considering, by self-pity, or any other cause, then very little Sol-48 is being made. So the person cannot concentrate, cannot think clearly, cannot make any effort of mind or study. And this is often the first sign of nervous disability. The next stage in digestion, of transformation, consists in the passage of Sol-48 to La-24. Hydrogen-24 is the energy, or gasoline that works our emotional center. This gasoline can be used up entirely in negative emotions, in which case the final stage of the digestion of food, the passage of La-24 into C12, is interrupted. Hydrogen-12 is energy that works the sex center, which rarely works with its own energy, and explains why people suffering nervous disposition rarely enjoy a healthy sex life, at least one not involving infrasex. This summation is brief, and obviously many more things could be said. What we should grasp, however, as a principle, is that the full digestion of food in the human mechanism, in this work teaching, consists of 6 stages. It goes far beyond the ordinary scientific idea of digestion that we're taught in school. Furthermore, we can see at every stage that maltransformation or indigestion can occur. Someone balanced, in all of their different energies, hydrogens or fuels, that are each used in their correct and appropriate proportion, at all of the various points of manufacture, enjoys a healthy and holistic existence. However, suppose that one is engaged in formatory work, that they study and research diligently both day and night, then they use for this, hydrogen-48, which is, Sol-48, for the conduct of their activity. If they use too much, then none, or very little is available for the further passage of it to La-24 and C12, then dysfunction occurs. Their emotional state and their sex life are starved, and one can recall many examples of individuals like this throughout modern history. In other words, there is a use and a misuse of every hydrogen in the body. For if we do not use hydrogen-48 enough, if we fail to think, or never try to think for ourselves, never applying our mind to anything, then there is a wrong accumulation of H48, in the center for which it should be used. It then poisons the center, damaging our intellect. Remember therefore, at this point, that not a single activity, either physical or psychic, is possible, save with the appropriate and right amounts of energy, with the appropriate hydrogen. We simply cannot think or feel, we cannot have sensation, or even move satisfactorily, without the particular and necessary hydrogen for that purpose, being present in our human mechanism. We all know how, that if we are seriously ill, that it is impossible to think clearly, or feel enthusiastic about anything, to move, or accomplish very much. This is because the octave of food, with all the different energies or hydrogens that are derived from it, is working at very low intensity. But we may also eat the wrong food as well, right at the very beginning, which is hydrogen 768, and in so doing start out incorrectly, by living on sodas, candy, and junk or heavily processed foods. Next, we may not have sufficient fresh air, that belongs to 192, if we are living a particularly sedentary lifestyle. Then we may be negative constantly, which interferes with 96 and 24, the outcome of which can be very serious. Or we may simply not think enough, perhaps even too much, and overthink everything, which implicates 48 and so 224, and then 12. All of this is complex, and at present can only be noted in a general outline, where what we should grasp is simply the general principle. Understand that our wrong function, our wrong thinking, may interfere with absolutely everything.